Hello friends, welcome to this meeting. The practice of meditation involves both stilling the mind and filling the mind. The two overlap and have the same aim, which is to be free of what seems to separate us from what is most real and fulfilling in ourselves and in all. We find that stilling the mind relieves us of much tension and distraction, revealing a relative peace and expansiveness. And we find that the most effective way to quieten the inner noise and chatter is to focus on a chosen thought or symbol, an idea with qualities that attract and absorb our full attention. Ideal subjects for meditation and contemplation are distilled from the non-dual wisdom teaching that our own essence, our self, is awareness, consciousness, which is identical in all human beings. And underlying the outer world of matter and energy is a principle more subtle than physical energy. Ultimately, the realization is that the self in everyone and the reality in everything is pure existence, awareness, perfection. At a time dedicated to meditation practice, we do not discuss or analyze the philosophy behind such statements. We take them as reliable signposts and focus one-pointedly on what they indicate. It is at other times in our life of inquiry that we read or listen to the teachings and then think deeply about them and integrate the essential ideas into our view of the world. And today I would like us to reflect together on a philosophical question, always remembering that the reason for doing so is to gain an understanding that will resolve confusion and doubts and lead us to inner clarity, serenity, and focus. We hear and we understand that ultimately all is one, and this makes sense. How could there be more than one reality? And we find that this oneness can be conceived as comparable to an ocean in which all the objects are like waves. The ocean is vast and continuous, and the waves are small and separate. But ultimately, the ocean and waves are all water. With analogies like this, we find a way of beginning to recognize unity among diversity and to see an unchanging, universal reality underlying what is apparently transient and divided. However, we know that such analogies are not perfect. There is one way in which the analogy of ocean and waves and clay and pots and the rest are clearly inadequate, which could leave us with the restless uncertainty. It may be said that things relate to the one as waves to water, but objects do have the defining qualities which make them what they are. There is a real difference between rice and sand, between fruits and leaves, even from the same tree, as trying to eat both will confirm. So in active life, can we really see through the differences and say that all is ultimately one? Can we? Or is it only possible to hold the view of unity in philosophical discussions and meditation sessions, but not in practical life? If so, it will bring us limited contentment. It may be said that the differences and divisions among things belong to appearances and not to reality. Can this distinction solve the difficulty? We know, for example, that the color of objects depends on the workings of our eyes and nerves. How things appear, taste and the rest, depend on our senses and metabolism. And we know that what seems to be solid matter from our usual point of view turns out to be much less dense when scientifically analyzed. Therefore, many of the different features of the way things appear turn out to be just that, appearances, rather than entirely real. Still, to say that the appearance of things is different to how they really are does not mean that they do not exist in their own way. If we all see a stone and an apple, we know that in both cases our senses are interacting with something, and those some things must be different. What is that something behind the appearance in each case? Philosophers have called it the thing in itself, or it may be referred to as the noumenon, where phenomenon means the world of forms as we experience them, and noumenon means this thing in itself behind the appearance. As students of non-duality and meditators looking for the direct experience of non-separation, we find a deep question here. We understand that things are not merely all in the mind. They exist independently of our mind and senses. At the same time, the noumena behind phenomena have their own particular qualities and they change, so that apples are good for eating and stones are good for building, but not the other way around. We find, therefore, that these things in themselves are not just appearances. They obey the laws of cause and effect, and at the same time, they are different from the one, the non-dual, the ultimate reality, which does not come and go, and is not divided in time and space. And so, the whole world of forms seems to be not just an appearance, and not absolutely real either. What then is it? Compelled by the significance of this question, and what seem to be the undeniable facts of our situation, thoughtful human beings are widely led to the conclusion that in some inexplicable way the world of forms and change has come into being out of the original absolute oneness, and that this creation must be the effect of some supreme creative power that originates in the Absolute. If this line of thought is followed, it leads to a picture of reality which includes the original oneness, the creative power, and the created world. And within the created world are we human beings, experiencing the interaction between our senses and the rest of the world. According to this account, it may be said that the world as created by the Creator is what is called the thing in itself. And the phenomenal world we experience is the interaction between our mind and nerves and the rest of creation. Something like this vision is found throughout the religious and philosophical traditions of the world. But does it really resolve all the difficulties? Or does it leave more questions than it answers? Does it? On this view, reality has become divided and formed something separate from itself. But there is no explanation of how that could be. This is clearly not a fully satisfying conclusion. And it leaves us uncertain about the reality beyond our mind. Our experience is still restricted to the level of forms and change, including the radical change we call death. So long as these gaps in our understanding remain, there will be cause for inner restlessness. It is often said, rightly, that the mind cannot solve these ultimate questions, being itself a detail of the whole, and that the solution has to be sought in transcending the mind. So let us try to understand our situation in a way that is most conducive to the inner clarity and serenity that opens a way to transcendence. We have been thinking of how everything comes into being as a process that unfolds in space and time. We have conceived of the original oneness becoming multiform, perhaps with something like a bang, and that from there evolves the universe of forms in which emerges life and eventually human beings. Apparently associated with human beings is self-consciousness. And now reality seems to include both reality in itself and our apparently individualized experience of the world with all the complexity that involves. What a drama! Friends, the change of perspective that may help us is this. It is to appreciate that the phenomenal world and our situation do not have an origin in space and time. How then does it occur? Words are limited, but we may point to the answer by saying that the phenomenal world and mind cannot be separated. It is not that one precedes the other. They necessarily occur indivisibly. We may think of the phenomenal world as experienced by mind, or of mind as occurring in the phenomenal world. The meaning in both cases is identical. Wherever there is mind, there is the phenomenal world of cause and effect. And wherever there is cause and effect, it is being known in the mind. Now it is clear that the world of causality and mind, or of mind and causality, is not itself the product of a causal or mental event outside or prior to mind and causality. When there is no experience in the mind, there is no phenomenal world. When there is no phenomenal world, there is no mind, no experience. There is non-dual being, consciousness, absoluteness. Are we implying that individual minds may be understood as something like particles of what could be called universal mind? and that the objects with which our minds interact are also comparable to fragments of the universal mind stuff? Provisionally, yes. We could say so. We may usefully conceive of each individual mind as an instance of mind in general, just as every movement is an instance of motion. Where there are no movements, there is no motion. And where there is no mind, there is no world. There is absolute self and no otherness. The practical point is that as we practice contemplation and meditation, there is no need for disquiet, confusion, or anxiety regarding the origin and nature of the world, or what might happen if we withdraw our attention from objects and bring the mind to stillness. All will be revealed as in its right place or no place. In active life and in scientific and philosophic investigation, we consciously use our mind and senses as instruments, knowing that our experience is the interaction between these mental instruments and everything else. At these times, which may be much of the day, the conscious use of the mind as a tool is the best way of dealing with practicalities. And it is also good practice for the way of inner inquiry, because to make the mind an instrument is to effectively affirm that mind is not self. Self is the conscious awareness that reveals the mind and phenomena. And this being awareness is not from a point in space and time or from within the mental world. Conscious awareness, self, is transcendent. The self, our true self, does not know or witness a field of experience from any finite perspective. Self is the whole, unbound, infinite, conscious awareness which makes all and is any experience possible. It makes all and any experience possible. The highest goal, the essential need, is freedom from the apparent experience of being contained in the mind world of space, time, and to know directly our true self as absolute being, consciousness, bliss. And we find ourselves seemingly isolated and separated precisely when we are identified with the mind. When our lived experience is that this individual mind and body is myself, and that the phenomenal world I experience through the mind affects myself. This is what seems to hide our true nature as absolute conscious reality. How are we to uncover our true identity? Evidently, by ceasing to identify with the mind and its contents. Does this mean that the mind has to stop working entirely as a center of experience? No, this is neither practical nor necessary. The need is to quieten those mental movements, the thoughts and feelings that express separation and isolation. These are the thoughts of acceptance and rejection, like, dislike. When the mind ceases to affirm multiplicity through separative reactions and meets all experience with equanimity, then the mind effectively becomes no mind, transparent. Then phenomena are known for what they are, and the light of absolute consciousness shines in and through all forms and changes. What is needed is in principle simple, but evidently in practice requires patience, determination, and balance. How are we to find the inner resources and skill required to wean the mind off its habitual reactions? It is by learning in principle and practice that bliss cannot be extracted from any finite object, outer or inner, and that the ultimate root of suffering also is not in events themselves, but in the mental reactions. Our equilibrium is not disturbed by objects, but by the mind's own reactions of acceptance, rejection, which affirm, "This affects me." The trigger and potency of such reactions is gradually lost when, through reflection and experience, we learn that all phenomena have their place in the phenomenal world, and that bliss is not found in anything or anywhere. Bliss is the nature of the self. The more we realize this, the less our sense of identity is invested in the moving mind, and what remains is the true I, non-separate, pure being, limitless, consciousness, taintless bliss. How does this apply in daily life? In the course of each day, we are likely to have pleasant experiences, less pleasant ones, to spend some time with our closest life companions, and some with relative strangers. All this is an opportunity to live consciously, sensitive and receptive to every quality we meet. Each form can remind us that all forms are transient. We recognize the same pure consciousness as the one reality in each and all. Then all joys consciously experienced will confirm that true joy and beauty are found where there is no separation. Friends, as we know, understanding is of little value without practice. We said at the beginning that meditation involves stilling and filling the mind with a focus that points to the supreme good within. Now, let us do some practice. Take a moment to let go of any tension. So we can do this by breathing consciously for a moment or two. Breathe in, pause, breathe out, pause. Breathe in, pause, breathe out. goes. Now, bring your attention to the heart center. Keeping your attention there, repeat the word light, light. If any other thoughts come up, let them dissolve in the light. And you can visualize the light in any form that is helpful to you. Light, light. If your attention wanders, bring it back to the heart center and light, light. Now, let us meditate on this. The light that illumines my mind is the universal light of pure consciousness. That light is bliss. That light am I. The light that illumines my mind is the universal light of pure consciousness. That light is bliss. That light am I. The light that illumines my mind is the universal light of pure consciousness. That light is bliss. That light am I. That light is bliss. That light am I. Friends, let us take this opportunity to live consciously, to be reminded by every form that ultimately all forms are transient, to recognize the same pure consciousness as the one reality in all. Then all joys consciously experienced will confirm that true joy and beauty are found where there is no separation. Thank you for being with me today.